Okay, so how many of you listen to classical music on a regular basis? Ever? At all? Okay, so a lot of you do. Well, according to a report published by Public Radio International in 2003, approximately 10 million Americans tune into a classical radio station every week. The smallest age group represented are young people, 12 to 34-year-olds. But what kind of surprised me was the largest age group is 35 to 54-year-olds, with older age groups falling somewhere in between. Now, of this 10 million, 66% of the listeners were college graduates. So this kind of indicates to us that educated people are listening to classical music. But why? More and more people are listening to classical music, and they believe that it can impact their lives in a significant way. Classical music, in fact, can have a positive effect on your brain. We're going to talk about why. First off, classical music can impact your brain's development when you're younger. Secondly, classical music can impact your mood in a positive way. And lastly, classical music can actually improve your grades. So now that we've kind of introduced what we're going to talk about, I'm going to move on to my first point, and that's how classical music, listening to classical music, can affect your brain's development. According to Dorothy Pomerantz, in an article she wrote for Forbes magazine in 2004, Disney's Baby Einstein products experienced a revenue jump in just 3 years from $25 million to $165 million. There's a lot of controversy over whether or not their claims are true. They say that they can develop babies' brains as young as a few weeks old by showing images of toys and animals move across the screen while classical music is playing in the background. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this. So a lot of people don't believe it, but $140 million in just 3 years indicates to us that the general public does believe in the power of classical music as it relates to your brain. A study done at Texas Women's University by researcher John Floor in 1996 says that 4 to 5-year-olds experienced greater brain activation when exposed to listening to Mozart, as opposed to control groups who listened to nature sounds and a group that listened to nothing, silence. The study was done based on EEG frequencies, which is a type of brain mapping software. It's relatively new. And it showed that there was an increase in cognitive processing in the group that was exposed to Mozart as opposed to the control groups. So this shows to us that there is a positive correlation between cognitive development and listening to classical music. So now that we've briefly touched on that, we're going to talk about how your mood can be affected by listening to classical music. Rosie McKnight of the New York Board of Education makes a connection between music tempo and stress. There are certain movements in Baroque compositions that have a tempo of about 60 beats per minute. This is significant to us because our resting heart rate is about 60 beats per minute. So they then concluded that listening to these slow-paced tempos can actually reduce our heart rates, reduce our blood pressure, and maybe even eliminate stress altogether. The TWU study that we talked about earlier with the EEG machines showed that the children who were exposed to Mozart exhibited greater alpha brain frequencies. Now, alpha brain frequencies are generally associated with a relaxed and stress-free state of mind, as well as with being alert and focused. So this tells us that, yeah, listening to classical music can make you a little bit more relaxed. The Journal of Advanced Nursing published an article in 2008 that connected music to sleep quality and depressive symptoms. They believe that listening to classical music gives our muscles a reaction and distracts us from our thoughts, and that's just natural when we listen to any kind of music. The journal also states that it's common knowledge that sleep disorders may result in fatigue, tiredness, depression, and problems in daytime functioning. So we can then assume that if classical music can improve our sleep, then it can improve our mood, because if you don't get any sleep, you're going to be cranky. So now that we've touched on how classical music can improve your mood, we're going to talk about what we all really care about. How and why does it affect your grades? I'm going to play something for you. and be thinking about what we talked about earlier, how classical music can make you feel a little bit more relaxed, and we're going to also talk about how maybe this can make you feel smarter. This is Mozart's Lacrimosa from his Requiem. It's from the third movement. So as you can see, it's got a kind of slower tempo than maybe rock music, which actually has an average tempo of about 105 beats per minute, which is a lot higher. So now that we've talked about that, we're going to go on, like I said, and talk about how it can affect your grades. The 2010 Journal of the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in Taiwan did a study with college students. They took 3 groups and asked them to perform a cognitive reading assignment. One group had no background noise. Another group was played classical music while they were asked to complete the test, and the third group had hip-hop music playing in the background. It's Taiwan. So they concluded then that what's playing in the background can actually affect your ability to perform cognitive assignments like reading, math, stuff like that. So the group that was played classical music had significantly higher scores than the group that was played hip-hop music. And as we all know, it's really common for us to have music or the TV in the background while we study or while we do homework. So this study kind of indicates to us that maybe we should have something a little less distracting playing while we're trying to do important things. My favorite studies, body of studies that I came across while doing this research was by physicist Gordon Shaw. And he did a lot of studies over 3 decades, ranging from how Mozart affects the complexity of paper snowflakes cut up by 3-year-olds to actually how it affects the IQ of college students. The studies he did all had similar results, an increase in IQ in the participants. This started the Mozart effect. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but it's this craze that started in the 90s. I think he released this study in 1993, and people wrote books, people sold tapes to try to get, obviously it was marketing, but their whole claim was classical music makes you smarter. Not true. Gordon Shaw's research was a lot more specific than that. He actually made a brain mapping model kind of thing that matched our brain frequencies to musical notes. And the first time that they activated this model brain, it produced actually recognizable music, and it sounded like Western classical music. So this was a breakthrough in this research, and he thought then that what if our brain already outputs something that kind of looks like classical music, what if we input that? If we listen to classical music, maybe we'll get more intelligent, more efficient results out of ourselves. So what he described it as was a warm-up exercise for our brains, not classical music makes you smarter. He just says that, if you listen to classical music, it's going to get you started. It's going to make it easier for you to focus, make it easier for you to do, more difficult tasks. So now that we've talked about how classical music can affect your brain development when you're younger, how it can affect your mood in a positive way, and how it can affect your grades, we're going to go ahead and conclude. As college students, we are asked every day to complete tasks, be focused, take exams, and maybe graduate on time, if all goes to plan. Higher brain function is a part of our everyday lives. Classical music can help you accomplish these things by improving your brain's development when you're younger, improving your mood, and relieving stress. And it can also improve your grades themselves by kind of getting your brain going. So next time you're stressed about taking a test or you can't quite focus on studying, maybe try turning on some Bach, some Handel, some Vivaldi, some Mozart, and you might actually be pleasantly surprised with the results that you get.